We have one more speaker tonight, and the next speaker has been a member of Carrollwood Toastmasters Club for more than 3 years. He is currently a member of the club's leadership team as treasurer. He is now working on completing his Leadership Development Pathways Level 1 with his third speech. He was born and grew up in the great city of Peabody, Massachusetts. Now note that I pronounced that Peabody, and it's spelled P-E-A-B-O-D-Y. No one from Massachusetts would ever pronounce that Peabody. Isn't that right, Don?
That is right.
It's Peabody, Massachusetts. Formerly, it was known as the leather capital of the world. Please welcome Don Prue as he presents his third speech titled, How a Qualified Opinion Saved My Job. Welcome, Don Prue.
Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, how many of you know what audited financial statements are? Well, for those that don't, they are a group of reports that summarize a company's financial performance over the past year. An independent auditing firm usually reviews the reports to say if they are presented fairly in all material respects. Now, what they mean by material can be very subjective. To demonstrate, if someone owed you $1,000 and they came to pay you back, but they only had $999.75, if you took that payment, it means that you think the 25 cents is not material to you. Well, it's the same for financial statements. No one expects them to be perfect. Hence the disclaimer in all material respects. Now, if the auditor does not feel comfortable saying everything is presented fairly, they will issue what is called a qualified opinion, stating there is something wrong. It is a serious claim that frequently results in a company's failure. This story is about a threat to issue a qualified opinion on a credit union where I had just started working. In 1988, I was hired as accounting manager for a credit union in Massachusetts. When I started the job, I discovered the books were a complete mess. Without getting into details, my predecessor, Jeff, had been gone for over 9 months. When I approached my boss, Joe, for help, he said, Don, I always let Jeff take care of the books. Give him a call. So I called Jeff, but he was not inclined to help. So I rolled up my sleeves and got to work figuring it out on my own. Then, to make matters worse, Dave, the CEO, was on a quality improvement quest. As a new employee, I was put on the quality improvement team. This team met every Wednesday, and the meeting would last 3 to 4 hours, beginning promptly at 8 a.m. You see, Dave was also a stickler for punctuality. If you were 1 minute late, he would kick you out of the meeting. While I was still figuring out the books, in walked our auditors to perform their annual audit. After a week, they asked for my suspense account reconciliations while I was still working on them. A suspense account is something used to post adjustments or corrections to a savings or checking account. They have to be cleared every day to stay in balance. If someone forgets to clear an adjustment, it will cause the account to be out of balance. This went on for over 9 months. I was able to convince the manager that the balance was only $60,000 and not material, remember material, in a $150 million credit union. The next day, Wednesday, I could not spend 3 hours in a quality improvement meeting. I decided to walk into the meeting 1 minute late. Just as I anticipated, Dave kicked me out of the meeting. I went back to my desk and continued to work on the suspense accounts. At about 11 a.m., I got a call from Helen, Dave's secretary, telling me Dave wanted to see me in his office right now. As I walked over, thinking this may be the end. As I sat down in the chair, he stared at me, turning a beet red. Then he said, "You're fired." Paused for 2 or 3 seconds, although it seemed like an eternity, then finished from the quality improvement team. He continued to berate me about how disrespectful I was for showing up late, my lack of commitment to the quality improvement process, and that he was going to reevaluate my position in the credit union. I apologized profusely and said I meant no disrespect. I had a lot of problems in accounting that I was trying to clean up, and I hoped someday I could rejoin the quality improvement team. But before I could finish the sentence, I believe there was still steam coming out of his ears when he said, "Get the hell out of my office." As I got back to my desk, the partner from the auditing firm, Al, showed up. He called his manager and me over and pointed to a ledger and asked about the suspense accounts. I gave him the same story about the 60,000 versus the 150 million and materiality, but he didn't buy it. He said that while the ending balance may be 60,000, look at the total activity running through the accounts. That was over 20 million, and that is material. He growled at his manager and said, I'm not going to issue an unqualified opinion. He went to my boss's office, grabbed him, and headed over to Dave's office. After about an hour, he called me in. They had agreed to write off the $60,000 and the auditors would issue an unqualified opinion. Dave looked at me and said that he realized that this was not my fault and that I could leave his office right now. A few minutes later, Joe came out of Dave's office. He was white as a ghost. He called me into his office and said that if this ever happens again, we would both be looking for jobs. In closing, if it hadn't been for the threat of the qualified opinion, Dave never would have realized or become aware of how messed up the books were, and I probably would have been transferred to a branch as a teller. 6 months after this whole ordeal was over, Dave would put me back on the quality improvement team. I ended up working there for 14 years, and in 1993, Dave actually awarded me the Outstanding Employee Award, which I have right here. Talk about coming full circle. Mr. Toastmaster.
Yeah, right.